Hey, welcome to the channel guys. So after spending a couple of months designing, my fairings were made and on the way. They've been in transit for 8 of their estimated 10-day trip and was just rustling up a lazy Saturday morning brew, eagerly awaiting a Monday, Tuesday arrival when there was a tap at the door and was none other than my Motomart delivery arriving safe and sound 2 days early. Now as mentioned, I got this kit from Motomarts through their eBay shop, but they do also have an online store at motomarts.com which you can grab links to in the description below. Now mostly aftermarket fairings have us all pretty divided with no shortage of good and bad experiences, but I've been so impressed with my Motomarts experience and I do thoroughly recommend you check them out. I thought I'd share this 2-part review on how to installation for anyone looking for a quality kit or just wanting help with installation. But before we jump into fitting them, let's get the stand out and go through some of the unpacking while I give you a few initial reviews plus some useful tips and info on Motomarts and aftermarkets in general which you might find helpful. Alternatively, you can go straight to installation in section 2 or feel free to navigate certain sections using the content tags in the description below. But I guess firstly a quick mention on import duty which should only be useful for fellow UK viewers. It was charged, but interestingly according to customs it's 50-50 whether your parcel is flagged for inspection and charges only apply if it is. I thought this to be a tad strange, but either way it came to around £38, so even if you are, it's not a massive amount. So anyway, as we can see, all the pieces are individually wrapped, the packaging looks good, and there's no damage to the box, so luckily it seems to have been a smooth trip. And as you can see from the first piece, the nose cowl, the finish is looking superb. No visible paint drips, the colours are vibrant, and the gradients are looking extremely well painted. It is a shame the top inside windscreen panelling isn't painted, as these are somewhat on display, unlike the insides of all the other fairings which are hidden. But I'm sure they would have done this for me if I'd asked. As for my experience, Motomart seem more than happy to work on any request you throw at them, making them one of the best sellers I've bought from today. Now one example is I even asked them to do a complete custom decal design on the side cowl here, one I honestly didn't think they'd be able to do, but as we can see they have and it looks awesome. Now a little info on Motomart's painting process for you quick as you're on the subject. They give 2 layers of primer and 3 layers of base coat before applying decals and finishing with 3 layers of clear coat. Now I only mention this as some sellers don't actually lacquer their decals and a few only give 2 layers of base coat, so Motomarts do provide a durable, good quality finish. As a bit of background for you as well, lots of emails were passed back and forth to clarify custom design requests, but Motomarts provided great comms in answering every one of them and happily worked through the design with me. They also updated me with pics throughout the process to make sure the design was correct and to allow for any changes before clear coating. So customer updates were top notch as well and reassuring to see the design before shipping. But anyway, what else? Oh, I guess a brief mention on the fairing moulds as well, as I bet a lot of people aren't too impressed with how thin and brittle aftermarket fairings can be. While I would kind of agree the brittle part may be somewhat true for all aftermarkets in the event of a crash, as not many hold up to knocks as well as OEMs. This doesn't mean all aftermarkets are weak, and so far these Motomart fairings seem damn good quality. They're not flimsy like others I've had in the past, but in fact seem to have similar flexibility and thickness to my OEMs. Now, I did actually ask about their ABS quality before getting the kit, as it does directly relate to the mold's quality and flexibility. And after a little digging, can tell you they import high-grade virgin ABS from Korea. It's not recycled. Our virgin ABS is important for a good quality mold, as recycled ABS, which some sellers do use because it's cheaper, is brittle and more vulnerable to flex and cracks. So keep this in mind when buying aftermarkets and always stick with sellers who use virgin ABS. But quality also comes down to the type of material and manufacturing process used, and this is most important for the durability of the moulds and the accuracy of the fitment, which is always a major issue with aftermarkets. So a quick bit of clarity on this if you weren't already aware of it, just to make sure you get the right kit. There are 2 types of manufacturing techniques for aftermarket fairings: compression moulding and injection moulding, and 2 primary materials, ABS and PVC. Now compression or thermal moulding is the cheaper of the 2, but quality and fitment is a gamble, as the moulds vary in thickness due to inconsistent pressure in the chambers, the holes are drilled manually by hand, and even worse, the tabs are glued on after the mould is made. This just spells disaster, so we'll stay clear of these. Injection moulding on the other hand, which is what this Motomarts kit is a little bit more expensive, but is manufactured under electronically controlled parameters with holes, tabs and spines all being prefabricated as one mould during the injection process, which makes for a uniformly thick, higher quality mould with a close to perfect fitment. And okay, occasionally some holes need drilling out, but that's only from the layers of paint filling them in. The holes themselves are in the correct size and place coming out of the injection process, and all the tabs are moulded together as one piece. So unlike compression moulding, there is no guesswork or human error at play, which is the most important thing. Moving on to the materials, ABS is durable and flexible with a higher tolerance to heat, although not without its limits, which is why heat shield is still advisable, and we'll mention that in a sec, while PVC is weak and brittle with a lower tolerance to heat. So for the highest quality, most durable, best fitting aftermarket fairings, always go with virgin ABS injection molded kits, and stay away from those thermal ones, as you'll be tearing your hair out trying to fit them, and that's if the tabs don't snap before you do. And finally, just a quick word on the heat shield. Motomarts do usually install this on the Cowls for you, so don't be concerned that it's not installed on mine, as I specifically asked to fully cover the Cowls myself. But just as a heads up, I took a total of 4 sheets measuring 230 by 480mm each for full coverage of the lower and middle Cowls, and that's for both sides, so remember to ask for a few extra sheets if you opt for doing the same, as they'll only provide you with one. Or alternatively, you can buy from eBay for $9.99 a sheet, which is the cheapest I've found, and you can grab a link to this seller in the description below. So anyway, that's pretty much it. Apart from the rear fender, all the parts are accounted for, including all the black plastic trims, and even a free windshield, which is quite a surprise. And Motomarts has delivered a great service, and by the looks of things so far, an even better product. And having a closer peek at these, now they're all unpacked, we can see just how clean the paint quality and finish is. It's honestly near perfection, I'm so impressed. But ultimately, no matter how perfect the paint job, I guess the real test is fitment, which I'm sure is what we're all interested in. I know I am. So with that said, let's push on to section 2, the how-to removal of OEM fairings alongside the instructional step-by-step assembly and installation of Motomarts Aftermarket fairings, which let's hope will be a breeze. So let's jump into it and find out. Okay guys, so first in the agenda, just to make life easy, you want to go ahead and lay out all the aftermarket pieces so you have decent access to them. And if you opted to install your own heat shield, do this now on both the lower and middle cowls. Next up, gather your weapons of choice needed to complete the job. These include a 3 5mm Allen key, a 3/8" torque wrench, an 8 10mm socket, a stubby Phillips screwdriver, a small flathead screwdriver and some pliers. You may also require the use of a few additional tricks like an electric drill, a 4 or 5mm drill bit, a rivet gun and some rivets. These will be for your brake line brackets on your front fender. If you haven't already got one to use the fitting hardware from, you will also need some M5 bolts and fairing clip nuts, otherwise known as spring nuts, to assemble the new C-cowl. And finally, an optional extra which I highly recommend you purchase are some nylon washers for your bolts, as these will help protect the paint finish from distorting or chipping when you go to tighten them. Okay, so once you've gathered all your tools, we're now ready to fit some fairings. So to kick things off, go ahead and remove the rider's seat by removing the 2 x 5mm bolts located under the seat padding on either side. Next up, remove the rear cowl by first taking off the rear seat to gain access to the bolts. Then remove the 4 x 5mm bolt securing the cowl to the subframe. Now to remove the cowl and to save scuffing it if they don't have the rubber protectors on, which are notorious for falling off, stand at the rear of the bike and take hold of the front of the cowl with your fingers wrapping around the underneath and your thumbs on top. Now carefully spread the underneath of the cowl out with your fingers and push down on the front with your thumbs. While doing this, carefully pull up and back and the cowl should slide right off. Now go ahead and install the new rear cowl the same method we used to remove it, except this time slide it into place at a more level angle as the rear first has to slide into the under tray tab. If you have an integrated tail light from TSD Industries for example, this tab will most likely be cut off by their instructions, but if you do, go ahead and position the light into place now. Now aftermarket fairings are a little bit more tricky, as despite a good quality mould, they still don't like to flex as much as OEMs. So a tip is to slide one side of the cowl on as far as possible, and then guide the other side on by applying pressure from the inside. Then just tweak it until it sits flush and all 4 holes are aligned. Now go ahead and screw in the 4 x 5mm bolts to completely secure the seat cowl to the subframe. The 2 shortest bolts with the shaft neck spacer go in the front, and the 2 longer thread bolts go in the rear. Now as mentioned before, a small tip here is to place washers in the bolts, as this will help avoid chipping or distorting the paint when you tighten them. Now we can crack on with assembling the seat cowl. If you have an old rear cowl, disassemble it and use the fitting hardware from this. There are 4 tabs for securing the cowl to the under tray. As mentioned in the tools section, if you don't have access to an old seat cowl, you will need to buy some M5 fairing clip nuts and bolts. You will also need 3 short M5 bolts to secure the top seat padding to the under tray as well. Whatever your means of obtaining these bits, go ahead and install the 4 times screw clips over to the new rear cowl tabs. Once the clip nuts are installed, place the new plastic under tray into position on the cowl. And then secure using the 4 x 5mm bolts. Try locating all 4 bolts loosely into position by hand first, as this will help make sure the under tray stays aligned and that you're not putting any due stress solely on one tab alone. Then go ahead and tighten them all up. Alternatively, you can just use M6 bolts and self-tap them directly into the ABS tabs, but if you do this, be very careful not to over-tighten or you'll break the thread and you won't have a very secure hold. With the under tray installed, position the rubber seat protector on top, flip it over and secure from the underside using the 3 short M5 bolts. Now these shouldn't be any more than 8mm in length or 4mm for the single rear one. Once assembled, swing over to the bike and clip the seat cowl into position. Next up, remove the left and right lower cowls, either as one unit or separately by removing the 4 5mm bolts. If removing separately, remember to remove the screw pop pin from the front underside and the cowl nut from the rear underside first, or you risk forgetting and snapping the tabs off. If removing as one unit, you can leave these in place for now and just unscrew the 4 bolts on each side to remove the lower cowls together. Now as a tip, before removing the 4 bolts on the other side, have a support on the floor beneath the cowls so not to put strain on the area of the fairing around the last bolt you remove. With the support in place, go ahead and remove the 4 5mm bolts. Once all the bolts are removed on both sides, hold the fairings, pull out the support and put down a protective mat. Perhaps use some of the padding the fairings came wrapped in. Now when you drop the fairing down and slide it out, this will avoid scratching any of the paint. Now we need to transfer over the cowl nuts to our new lower cowls, but let's go ahead and take off the middle cowls first so we can transfer all the cowl nuts at once. So to remove the middle cowls, start by first removing the single 5mm bolt on the side. Next, remove the 3 pot pins located at the front on the inner sides of the indicator where the cowl and front spoiler meet. The 2 closest to front are screw pot pins, so with little pressure applied, unscrew the pin to lift it out and remove with your fingers. Now if it's not playing ball, carefully wedge a flathead screwdriver into the edge and pop it out. The third one, furthest to the back, is a pop pin, so just use a flathead to pop it out and then remove with your fingers, although you can just leave it in place as long as it's popped out of the fairing. Now we can go ahead and remove the middle cowls by first unclipping the tank tabs. To do this, hold the side of the cowl securely with one hand, and while lightly pulling up and away from the bike, push down on top of the cowl closest to the tabs with the other, and they should unclip from the tank tab slots. Now there's definitely a fine art to clipping these tabs on and off, so don't be too forceful or you run the risk of snapping them off. Next, carefully guide the tabs out from the side headlight cover slots. Now work your way around to the front where the nose cowl attaches to the side cowl and carefully pop the 2 tabs out of place. Now it might be necessary to use a flathead screwdriver to assist with this, or simply wedge the flathead in the top edge of the tab slot and twist. This will lift the tabs and they should pop out no problem. With all the tabs unclipped, support the fairing and disconnect the turn signal connector. Now swing around to the other side of the bike and repeat these same steps for the left cowl. Okay, with the left and right lower and middle cowls off, we can now transfer over the hardware for both. Starting with the lower cowls, there are 5 cowl nuts to transfer over, which I'm pointing out to you now, including the one located on the bottom at the rear of the cowl. To remove the cowl nuts, just take something blunt like an Allen key and simply push them out. They should come out relatively easy, but be careful not to split them, and remember to support the bracket when pushing them out. Then just continue with removing the other 4. And then go ahead and remove the screw pop pin located at the front. With all the hardware removed, we can now go ahead and install them onto the new lower cowls. To do this, hold the cowl nut in place with your thumb and use a flathead screwdriver to wedge the edges into place, working your way around until the top sits flush. Now just do the same for the other cowl nuts. The 5th cowl nut located on the bottom at the rear is installed on the right lower cowl. With all the cowl nuts in place, if you're installing the lower cowls as one unit, which I recommend you do, take this time to assemble the left and right lower cowls together. Do this by first connecting the tabs at the front of the cowls. You want to insert them at a slight angle to one another so the hook tabs can slot into position. Then secure them using the screw pop pin. Now bring the rear of the cowls together and secure them using the 5mm bolt. So with the lower cowls now assembled, set them aside and move on to transferring the hardware from the middle cowls. Start by laying out all the parts needed for this assembly, including your old cowls and black trim pieces. There are 3 trims used to assemble each cowl, and it's worth noting where they go, how they fit and where their tabs are before beginning. If you have bolt-on turn signals, go ahead and remove these using an 8mm socket, or if you have adhesive signals like me, you may decide to keep them in place and just use the OEM black trim pieces they're adhered to. Whichever option you take, we still need the screws that secure the plastics to the cowls. There are 10 screws in total to be installed for each fairing, which I'm pointing out to you now, and they are M4 threads with an 8mm shaft. If you prefer to keep your old fairings assembled, you can purchase these screws separately on eBay or even ask Motomarts to provide you with some in your kit. If transferring your old screws like me, do one trim at a time to keep things simple. Begin with the rear plastic trim furthest from the indicator. Remove the 2 screws and carefully guide the tabs out of place, taking note of how they fit. Now go ahead and install this trim straight to the new fairing. Start by connecting the cowls by slotting the tab on cowl A into the tab slot on cowl B. Now take your trim and locate their tabs into the correct cowl tab slots, starting with the lower cowl A first and then clip into lower cowl B. Once in position, secure with the 2 screws you previously removed. Now go back to your old cowl and remove the side spoiler trim that for me still holds the adhesive turn signal. Do this by removing the 4 screws located here. With the screws off, carefully guide the trim out from the tab slots. Then put it to one side, as before installing this we need to remove the last plastic trim, as this is positioned underneath the spoiler trim, so it needs to be fitted first. Do this by removing the 4 screws located here. Then unclip the trim from its tab slots and remove. Now transfer the 2 trims over to the new cowl in the reverse order that you removed them in, starting with the small trim first and then screw into place. It may be necessary to pinch the cowls together as you do this, just to keep the holes aligned. Now install the spoiler trim. Start by familiarising yourself with the tabs on the trim and the corresponding tabs on the cowl itself. Carefully guide these into position, making sure all edges are flush with the fairing, all tabs are seated correctly and all the holes are aligned. Once in position, secure with the 4 screws you previously removed. With the left cowl all assembled, now go ahead and repeat these same steps for the right cowl. Once you have both cowls assembled, put them aside along with the lower cowls, as before installing these we'll first move on to the tank cover and front nose cowl, as these need to be fitted first in order to install the side cowls. So beginning with the tank cover and the black side trim covers, start by removing the 5mm bolt on the side trims here, then the 5mm bolt towards the front of the tank here, and then the pot pin just in front of it here. Next, remove the same 2 bolts and pot pin on the left side. Now remove the 5mm centre bolt at the base of the tank. And finally, remove the screw pot pins located on the top edge of the side covers on either side. With all the bolts and pot pins off, we can now go ahead and remove the tank cover. Start by wedging up the sides with some light persuasion until it starts to lift. Once the rubber seal around the gas cap is through, it should come off no problem and we can begin transferring the cowl nuts over. There are 3 cowl nuts to transfer over to the new tank cover, which I'm pointing out to you now, 2 on the sides and 1 at the base. To remove them, simply wedge them out with your fingers from the side with the metal stud and then put them aside. Now remove the black tank cover side trims by removing the 2 screws located on each side. Then carefully unclip the tabs from the tank cover slots, starting with the hook tab near the centre bolt. If it's anything like mine, you will find this a little tricky, but just be patient and careful not to break them off. As with all the tabs, there is an art form to getting them on and off. And don't forget to also remove the 2 pot pins located at the front of the tank cover if you didn't already do this when removing it from the bike. This is where your pliers will come in handy. With all your hardware now removed, go ahead and begin transferring them to the new tank cover. Start by installing the 3 cowl nuts. To make inserting them easier, remove the metal stud washer, leaving just the rubber grommet. Install this and then replace the metal stud washer back into position on the underside of the cowl. Now do the same for the other 2 cowl nuts. Next, install the left and right black side trims, starting from the hook tab nearest the centre bolt and work your way along, making sure all the tabs are securely fitted. Then secure in place with the 2 screws for each trim. Once assembled, have a quick look to make sure all the tabs and screws are secure and that the side trims are clipped together at the back nearest the centre bolt. Now swing over to the bike and install the new tank cover with the attached side trims. Gently position it into place, making sure the gas cap and rubber seal are correctly seated through the tank cover opening. Next, secure the tank cover by screwing the bolts and pot pins back in their positions. Start with the 5mm bolts on the side trim, then the bolt on the front side of the tank, and then the pot pin just in front of it. After doing the same for the other side, go ahead and replace the 2 pot pins located on the top edge of the side trims. And then finally screw in the 5mm centre bolt. Now go ahead and reinstall the rider seat and secure it with the 2x5mm bolts underneath the padding on either side. Next up, we can move on to the front fender. To kick things off, start by grabbing your 8mm socket and removing the brake line bolt. Then remove the 3x5mm bolt securing the fender to the lower forecast. Now swing around and repeat for the other side. The left brake line bolt may require a 10mm socket. Okay, now go ahead and remove the front fender from the bike and we can begin transferring the hardware over. There are 6 cowl nuts to transfer over, which I'm pointing out to you now, but with the Fender we also have the corresponding brake line brackets to remove, which are accessible from the inside and will most likely be riveted in place. Starting with the cowl nuts though, go ahead and remove these, and remember you may find it easier to take out the metal stud washer first. Now to remove the brake line brackets, we'll need to start by drilling out the rivet pins. So with little pressure applied and the drill set to a low speed, carefully drill out the rivet until the rivet head snaps away. Then of course do the same for the other side. Now simply pull the brackets out with your fingers, or again if they're a tad stubborn, use a flathead screwdriver to assist with easing them out of position. With all the hardware now removed, go ahead and install the cowl nuts to the new Fender. As before, start by first removing the metal stud washers to make inserting the grommet easier. When reinserting the metal studs, remember these go on the insides. Now finish up installing the other cowl nuts. Now reinstall the brake line brackets. When inserting them, make sure the metal tab is seated correctly in the Fender brake line slot. Next, take your rivet gun and rivets and secure each bracket back on the Fender. You can either insert the rivet pin in the gun and proceed this way, or insert the rivet pin in the bracket first and then snap into place with the gun. Either technique is fine. With the cowl nuts and brackets now fitted, go ahead and install the Fender back on the bike. Align the holes and screw in the 3 bolts securing the Fender to the lower fork casts, and then secure the brake line brackets with the 8mm bolt. After repeating these steps for the other side and with the Fender all fitted, we can now draw our attention to the front nose cowl. To kick things off, start by unscrewing the 6 bolts securing the windscreen to the cowl. Next, remove the left and right mirrors by removing the 2 bolts on each that secure them to the fair stay bracket. If you have integrated mirrors, remember to disconnect the connectors and snake the cable through the hole you made for them. With the mirrors now off, carefully slide the windscreen out and put it to one side. Now push on with removing the dash headlight covers by removing the 3mm bolt here and then the inverted pop pin here. Once repeated on the other side and both headlight covers are off, go ahead and remove the nose cowl. Start by disconnecting the LED 3-pin connector from the wiring loom located behind the right dash headlight cover we just removed. Pop it off its bracket first and then simply wedge the latch up with a flathead screwdriver to disconnect. Now go ahead and remove the front nose cowl and we can begin transferring the hardware over, starting with the windscreen. There are only 4 of 6 cowl nuts to transfer over, as the 2 middle cowl nuts attach both the screen and cowl to the fairing stay bracket, which is where they should remain for proper fitment. With that said, go ahead and remove the 4 cowl nuts from the old screen, and then transfer them over to the new screen in the same way we did the other cowl nuts, with the use of a flathead screwdriver and a bit of delicate persuasion. Next we'll transfer over the mini LED light. Start by removing the 2 screws that attach the LED to the cowl tabs. With the LED off, proceed with removing the 4 fairing clips, which are otherwise known as clip nuts, spring nuts, spy nuts, U nuts, C nuts, and the list goes on. Now begin transferring the 4 fairing clips over to the new front cowl. Be sure to install them with the nut facing down on the underside of the tabs. With the clips in place, reinstall the mini LED light and secure using the 2 Phillips screws you previously removed. Now swing over to the bike and reinstall the new front cowl, making sure the tab slot on the inside of the cowl is correctly fitted around the tab lip on the front spoiler. Snake the 2-pin LED cable through the right side opening on the dash, and with the inner cowl tab and spoiler correctly aligned, seat the wing mirror holes over the threads on the stay bracket. Now reconnect the LED connector to the wiring loom, making sure the cable doesn't obstruct the tab for the side headlight cover, and then attach the connector back onto its clip bracket. Next up, reinstalling the windscreen. Align the holes and partially insert all the bolts by hand as you go, and then fully tighten. Hold off in installing the 2 middle windscreen bolts for now, as we'll first install the mirrors. Start by screwing in both bolts a little at a time, making sure the cowl stays in place, and then fully tighten them. Don't go screwing one bolt in all the way to full lock. Then do the same for the other mirror. Now go ahead and insert the 2 remaining windscreen bolts. These 2 bolts are slightly longer than the other 4 as they go through the fairing stay bracket as well, so try not to get them mixed up or they won't screw in. With the front cowl all fitted, draw your attention back to reinstalling the dash headlight covers. Start by guiding the headlight cover into the tab on the front cowl, and then secure in place with the 3mm bolt. Now grab your pop pin and insert it through the trim headlight cover and the inner trim of the side spoiler. Remember, this is pushed in place from the back side of the trim, not the front. Now swing round and repeat these same steps for the left headlight cover. With all the other cowls fitted, we can now begin installing the middle cowls. Start by familiarising yourself with the tabs on the side cowls to know exactly where they are, and then of course the corresponding slots on the tank cover, headlight side covers and nose cowl, as all these tabs are very fragile and knowing how they fit will reduce the risk of breakage. Now we can begin installation. Start by connecting the front tabs underneath the headlight. If like me you have trouble clipping them in first try, don't force it. Stop, file the tabs down a little and then try again. But don't overfile or snap them off, as these are important for retaining a snug join where the cowls meet. Once filed down enough, clip the tabs into place by positioning the cowl at a 45-degree angle to the nose cowl slots. Holding the end with your hand, apply a small amount of pressure to the tabs as you do this and you'll hear it clip into place. Next, align the tabs with the headlight cover. With your fingers pushing in on the cover and your thumb on the cowl pushing away, carefully guide them into position. And now for the tank tabs. As with the nose cowl tabs, if these don't clip in with relative ease first try, it might be necessary to file the tabs on the cowl or the tab slots on the tank cover. But again, file a little at a time. If it's not fitting, stop, file a bit more and try again, as you don't want to file too much off. But once filed down enough, go ahead and clip the tabs into place. Exert light pressure on top of the tabs with one hand and push up and in with the other until you hear a snap. Once all the tabs are checked to be seated correctly, with hopefully clean joins like these, go ahead and reinstall the two screw pop pins located on the front spoiler underneath the headlight, and then the single pop pin at the back on the indicator spoiler. Now reinstall the 3mm bolt that secures the middle cowl to the frame. And after repeating these steps for the left cowl, we can begin installing the final piece, the belly pan. If installing this one unit, place your lower cowl on a protective mat, slide it into position, and then just as you did to remove it, place the support on the floor underneath the cowl to elevate it. Next, swing around the left side of the bike and put your 3 hoses through the cowl opening, which is easy to do with the cowls loose. Now screw in the 8 bolts to secure both left and right lower cowls to the frame. Starting with the right side first, screw them in place, but don't fully tighten, as you may need to adjust the cowls as you go. Now secure the left cowl, and once done, work your way back to tighten all the bolts up. And that's it, done and dusted. Although it wouldn't hurt to give them a quick wash and wax just to help protect the finish. So looking back, Motomart's service and attention to detail on the custom request has been superb. The moulds, paint quality and decals are all excellent and have been finished to a high standard. And now the fairings have been installed, I can't express just how impressed I am with them. The installation went very smoothly with no major fitting problems, making them as high quality as they look. The tabs all locked together completely hassle-free, with a minor exception of 1 or 2 which needed to be filed, but once they were, the fit was spot on, and as a result, the cowl joins are mostly all super snug, just like OEM. The only minor issue I had throughout the entire installation was with the black trims used to connect the middle cowls together. They didn't quite line up with the cowl tabs, so I just used my OEM trims and the tabs lined up perfectly. The overall fitment and quality has been near perfection, making them a pleasure to fit and all things considered one of the better quality aftermarket kits I've ever purchased. So if you're ever after a quality set of aftermarkets for your ride, be sure to pay Motomarts a visit over at their eBay store or pop over to their website by clicking here, or you can find links to them in the description below. And it should just be quickly said, I have no affiliation with Motomarts, this is just my opinion and what I think about their product for you folks. But I can honestly say these boys are now my go-to for aftermarket fairings in the future. Well peeps, I hope you've enjoyed the video and found some of it useful. If you have any questions, feel free to post comments below, and please don't forget to subscribe for lots more vids in the future. And if you're a lover of extreme sports, travel, filming or motion graphics and effects, you'll love our channel, so be sure to pay our playlist page a visit for tons of action. Right, well I'm gearing up and going for a spin on the bike, so we'll say adieu. You on the other hand have some fairings to fit, so enjoy. Be sure to print off the description below if you want notes to follow, as all the dialogue is in there. Alright, see you soon. Safe riding.